Hey, how's it going? I saw a really nice interview with a guy called, I'm not sure if you've heard of him, Jason Calacanis. I don't know what's up with me and these and pronouncing these names. I hope I'm getting it right. But anyway, this guy is an angel investor who he was originally backed by Mark Cuban, um, but he also invested. He was one of the early investors in Uber. He also is an investor in Robinhood, Wealthfront, Desktop Metal, DataStax, Thumbtack, Superhuman, and Trello. All some of the companies under his belt. So probably somebody worth listening to. I didn't know about him before, but he was in an interview on the CoffeeZilla channel, which, by the way, I totally recommend. It's actually, I mean, they have. I like many. I find some nice conversations on there that I actually get something out of occasionally. There are others that are a little less useful, but yeah, whatever. So anyway, I sent the link to a couple of friends of mine because I wanted to share with them some of the stuff that he talked about. So there was one particular part in this interview which I really liked. Um, so I don't know if you remember last time I talked about how I've heard from many truly successful people. When we talk about success, I know that it's easy to think that anybody who drives around in a Lamborghini and takes photos of their Lamborghini and posts it to Facebook or to Instagram stories or whatever it is that they're doing lately these days, whatever the kids are doing. It's easy to think this is a successful person. I think that we live in a time where people think that they equate consumerism with success, right? And then you've got these people who are okay, so they're not necessarily flashing their fancy cars and things, but they're basically selling thin air, and they're positioning themselves like they are successful. Look, I don't want to necessarily, without doing my research or knowing exactly who these people are, I wouldn't want to spell out some of those names. But like, for instance, the likes of Tai Lopez. I know he's probably an older example from what's really out there these days, but that type, and yeah, he was also one of the Lamborghini types. But anyway, there's this thing in our industry where people are they create this culture, right, where it's a kind of rich dad. Sorry, not, it's a think and grow rich sort of a culture. It's most people in the industry are very familiar with that book. Most of us have read it, obviously. Think and Grow Rich, which was actually apparently the entirety of it was based on a fraud, that Napoleon Hill himself was a fraud. It's an interesting story. But also, The Secret is another one from that culture. The Secret, the Law of Attraction was another one. And these various sort of things. So the people who are from this subculture, they like to tell you about the importance of, number one, having a mentor, and number two, buying courses. I recall like one of the earliest memories in the internet marketing world. And by the way, keep in mind, I built an internet-based marketing business. An internet-based business. When I was 16 years old, that was back when when Amazon and Google were coming out. This is like, that's how long ago it was. I built it when I was 16 years old, and it wasn't something that was like rocket science. Okay, it wasn't something super tough. It didn't require a whole lot of the stuff that the complications that people have gotten into these days. I didn't study any of this stuff. I didn't know of Napoleon Hill at that age. I didn't know about The Secret, the Law of Attraction, or any of that crap. So when I was in my 20s and I came across some of the early internet marketing gurus, one of the emails I received, I recall, showed a picture of the guy's bookshelf, without naming names. You may even, know who I'm talking about. It shows a picture of the guy's bookshelf of all the marketing courses that he's bought. And he tells us that he spent $100,000 on courses. And of course, the natural conclusion is if you want to be successful, you're going to also need to do the same thing. Now, for a long time, I felt sort of like the odd one out, because people would come to me, and people from our industry would come to me and they'll be like, "Oh, did you check out so-and-so's course? Have you seen John Reese's course on such and such? Have you looked at Ryan Dice's course on this and that? Have you seen blah, blah, blah?" And it's like all these different, have you checked out Frank Kern's whatever? And they tell you all these names and all these courses. And the answer from me is always, no, I haven't. And I felt guilty. I felt bad. I felt like there's something wrong with me. Like I was maybe not cut out for this because I didn't do those things, because I didn't purchase those courses. I wasn't familiar with those courses. I didn't think it was a good idea to invest into them. And perhaps I was missing out on something golden, something really important that I should have probably, picked up on. And I think this is actually the reason why you see me doing things so differently from how everybody else has been doing it. I think it has turned into my power. It's that I've become somebody who does things out of the box, right? I'm not inside the same box as the rest of the industry, because I haven't read all the same bullshit that everybody else has read, for one. But also, so like I said, these successful people who I'm talking about, they were not part of this culture. Guess what? Probably Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, etc., they did not read Think and Grow Rich. I'm just guessing. I don't know. But my guess is that they did not become successful as a result of reading Think and Grow Rich, and they didn't need to learn about the secret law of attraction, because what they did was not actually think about how to become. They didn't just sit there and imagine being successful, imagine a Lamborghini or whatever it is. What they did was they were just really clever. They were really smart people who worked really hard, and they were in the right place at the right time. And some of them, yes, they had some extraordinary advantages. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. Some of these people had some advantages, including having access to money, having connections, going to some of the top schools and the top university. Everybody talks about how they dropped out, right? But they don't talk about the fact that, dude, the guy was going to a school where basically all the people around him ended up being he was surrounded by really smart people who were also connected and were part of the foundation of the company that they built. So anyway, I digress. The advice that was So whenever these people are asked about the idea of having a mentor, having somebody to guide you, to somebody to ask you about, somebody that you can ask, who can give you direction and show you what to do. Most of these guys say, no, I don't have a mentor. I didn't have a mentor, and I don't believe in that idea. Mark Cuban said something along the lines of, I hope I'm not misquoting, but I did hear him being asked that very question. You can find a video on this and take it from the horse's mouth. But basically, it was along the lines of, no, I never had a mentor. What I did was I learned by figuring things out. By figuring things out, I learned stuff. And that's kind of like how I've done it. Just by figuring things out, I've learned things. And I think that you can learn way more from trying to figure things out than to, especially these guys. Like, I'm not completely saying, hey, don't find somebody, take some information from somebody who's made it. But I mean, think about who you're taking that information from and what they're charging you for it. Okay, because I heard about this girl, right? She this girl and her husband, a couple. They spent something like $50,000 with some of my colleagues, right, to get into their mentoring program, into their coaching or whatever. Now, I don't know what it is that they got for $50,000, but I mean, it seems like what they told her. Okay, so for $50,000, I think they told her the secret. I think that they told her, listen, you're a pretty girl. You're blonde and young and perky and all that stuff. You'd look good on video. Why don't you shoot some videos in bikinis and having a nice lifestyle? Because see, apparently I didn't know this, but in that video that I saw, they were talking about the interview with Jason that I'm talking about. They were saying that the flex for the guys is the Lambo, right? The Lambo and the designer watches and the designer whatever clothes and so on. But for the girls, for the lady gurus, what the flex is bikinis and like yoga and vegan, healthy living and that sort of thing. So apparently that's. I didn't know that. I didn't actually know that. So somebody came along and probably explained to them, listen, you probably don't want the guy in the video. Use the girl because she's beautiful or whatever. She's cute. She'll look good in video. She'll attract a lot of views. And sure enough, they started to have some success. Now, I won't take that away from them. But $50,000 is a shit ton of money. If you gave me $50,000 when I was when I was starting, when I was trying to get my business off the ground, $50,000 would have gone a long way. Hell, if you give me $50,000 in one shot right now, I could probably do quite a bit with it. It's still in my business. That'd buy you a shit ton of advertising for one. Hell, you can do a lot of stuff with $50,000 worth of advertising. You could really launch a business with 50 grand of advertising. That's not a small amount of money. It's not a huge amount of money in the greater scheme of things, of course. As an investment, though, $50,000 is a decent chunk of money. And I can't believe that people would actually pay that just to have a mentor. I had another friend of mine another colleague. Obviously I know these guys. These are colleagues because they're, I'm from the same industry. We go to the same conferences. We sell in the same market, right? And I think I saw him hanging around with, I don't know, 4 or 5 guys who each had paid $20,000 for the privilege of hanging out with him. I don't know what they get for the 20 grand, but 20 grand. And by the way, none of this is to take away from the fact that the guy might know a thing or two about a thing or two, okay? But for $20,000, dude, I could learn a lot of stuff with $20,000. Is all I'm saying, right? You could actually take that and invest it into figuring things out and have something more concrete than somebody, looking at your business and maybe telling you, oh, why don't you try that? Why don't you give that a go? I could hire some experts to do things for me that I don't know how to do. And that was another guy, I can't remember the name of the guy on that interview, but there was another one where it was another really successful entrepreneur who'd made it, in his line of work. And he was talking about how, again, they were talking about the idea of mentors. And he said, I don't believe in mentors. I learn from my employees. And that's a really, I thought that was absolutely brilliant because that is actually what I do. I learn from my employees, especially with, sometimes I have to, I do certain things to get the most out of my employees. Okay. But for instance, maybe you don't know this, but the recent course that the recent training I did, the Business Command Center plus the more recent video series, the high volume email sending course, and the subsequent one that we're going to be doing soon on horizontal scaling, are courses where I teach you what I learned from technical guys. That I'm a technical guy. I've been programming since I was a child, and these concepts were so freaking difficult for me that I couldn't figure them out. Like I got a lot of stuff I figured out on my own, but then when I got to a point where, okay, I can't figure this out by myself, I hired a couple of guys and had them implement some stuff for me, and I asked questions and I'd bounce ideas from this guy to that guy, and I intentionally hired two people to do the job because I wanted to make sure that it was that I had the best output. And so I would take one idea from one guy and I'd go float it by the other guy to see, what do you think of that? And he'll tell me, oh, and he'll poke holes in it. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I go back to the guy that gave me the idea. I'm like, what about this? What about that? And so it comes off like I actually know something that maybe I don't know completely very well. And pretty soon I picked up what they were doing. And in the middle of the job where they failed to actually complete the job that they're experts in and I'm not, okay, they're being paid as experts to do the job, and they failed and didn't know how to figure it out. And I fixed it. I figured it out. I'm the one who figured it out in the end, right? It was a terrible problem. It took me a long time to fix it, to figure it out and to get it sorted. And so when I got that sorted, and one of the guys says to me, and we became friends. One of the guys said to me, honestly, I've never talked about this sort of thing with a guy, who's founder of a company, because I had such deep technical knowledge. I had another guy. I know how to program in many computer languages, but I don't know Python. Python is not one of the languages that I've actually picked up. And the guy who had done my machine learning code, he built it all in Python, and he gave it to me, and I had him on a video conference, and I'm uploading it to the server, and I started to try to get this code to work. And so I started doing these things. I'm like, do you know this? And he goes, no. I'm like, well, looks like I might know I might know a bit of Python then. He didn't know the things about, like, he knows Python, but he didn't know the things that I was doing to get the code to work. He didn't know how to do that. Again, that's not so the point is I was learning from this guy, but I'm also I'm staying always ahead by learning from the people that I employ. And so when I take that learning away from these people who I've employed, that's way more valuable than going to a mentor, paying way too much money for that, for basically what amounts to advice. Right? Because I have practical, useful knowledge, useful information. Now, I solved my problems. My own business problems were solved as a result of this. And then I went ahead and I actually shared that knowledge in a course and training, and I brought it down to a very simple level so that this highly technical, highly difficult thing that gave trouble to me, to the experts who I had hired, right? Me, a technical guy, both had struggled with these concepts, and then I was able to bring it down, and I saw my students who are marketers, who are not actually technical in any way, and they've actually reproduced the exact setup that I have. And that was awesome to see that. But anyway, I am a little bit digressing. But it was the idea of mentoring being so critical and so key, especially when it's so highly priced, I think is a complete farce. And this Jason Calacanis, I think that's the right way. That should be how it's pronounced if those letters are in that order, I think. Unless it's Calacanis. No, it can't be. Okay, Calacanis, most likely it's Calacanis. So anyway, he was saying, take a fraction of that money and just find somebody who is like 1 year ahead of you, ahead of where you want to be. So, look at like where you are in business, where you want to be, and find like 3-4 people who are sort of just one year ahead of you, right? And just invite them to dinner. You pay. And it would, do this once every, do this 3-4 times a year. You could cycle it around or something like that. You could, I can't remember how frequently he said to do it, but even if you did it once a month, I mean, how much is a dinner bill going to be between 3-4 guys? It's probably still not going to come up anywhere near the cost of these coaching and mentorship deals. I think that this is a this is a smarter way to do it, which is one of the reasons why I formed this our private Facebook group, and many of the communities that I've built in the past. It was always with the vision that my students would actually be able to interact with each other and partner up together and do things together. And let me give you a little bit of experience so that you can, to put this in context. Back when when I first got started in the industry, one of the things, so this is like really early days, like you guys probably mostly were not even part of the industry at the time. Okay. So when I came in, I'd read this book called Magnetic Sponsoring, which you might be familiar with, by Mike Dillard, and I started to promote it as an affiliate, and I'd made a few sales of that course. I'd started to see some results. Now, the truth of the matter is that I didn't really think much of the sales letter that sold me the book. When I read the book, I thought it was a clever sales pitch. Basically, I didn't really think that much of the book either. And when I ultimately used the stuff that I had learned, actually, to be honest, I'd got more value out of the next product up from that, which was actually given to me by a friend, and specifically because Tim Irway and Tom, what's his name? Tom. Anyway, a couple of the other guys on there, they got a little bit more technical. But the reality is, even the examples that I pulled from there to follow their instructions, they didn't work like they said that they worked. Okay, so I went and I did this, and it worked. I figured things out for myself pretty much, using a little bit of the guidance. At the time I also bought Perry Marshall's definitive guide to Google AdWords, which was snooze fest. I read a chapter or two of it, and I was like, this is bullshit. Anyway, so I went ahead and I sort of just put bits and pieces together and figured it out, and I had some sales. Now, at some point, Dillard wrote an email to the list saying something along the lines of, hey, it's my, I don't know what it was, 30th birthday or something like that at the time. And people asked me what I want to get for a present, what they'd like me to get, what they'd like to get me as a gift. And I said, maybe if you would write me a testimonial. So I was like, and I remembered that Dillard had said something about having written a testimonial for somebody who he sort of, looked up to and was given an opportunity. So I was like, you know what, I'm gonna write him a testimonial. So I sat down and I wrote it out and I sent it. And sure enough, I don't know how long after, it was maybe a week or so afterwards, he invited me into what was I forget what it was called at the time, but it became the Better Networker Forum at a later point. So that community was migrated to a different platform. So I forget what it was when it first came out. Anyway, so I was invited as a private beta tester into this community, and I went in, and among the first couple of people I met when I started out there, was Fernando Ceballos, Raymond Fong, and David Schwinn. These were the guys who I came across when I first went there, and they were at a similar level of progress to where I was. I think perhaps they were a little bit more ahead of me at that point. I think Raymond and Fernie were because they were a team. They had they're bouncing ideas off each other. They're really clever guys as well. So I actually started to work with those guys, with both of them. We did some. We collaborated a little bit. We bounced some ideas. We talked about what we were working on, what we were doing, and so on. And this flourished. Eventually what happened was, I think that Fernie and Ray recommended me to Tim or to Mike. I can't remember what the deal, who or what, but they recommended me to them. I think that they weren't originally considering me because I wasn't living in the United States. So I wasn't really, the first thought on their mind. But after seeing that I knew a thing or two about a thing or two, they brought me on, and that was like my first big my first big break, really. Was when I started working with them, and I was given basically an infinite budget to play with in terms of advertising, and I quickly proved myself, and they were like, yeah. They had an agency at the time that I was competing with, and I beat the agency within the first month, and within 3 months was like crushing everybody who was doing who was an affiliate for them. And so that turned into the various opportunities that I had throughout my career in this industry. They connected from there. One of the things that came of that as well, so just another one, just to show you how, like, where the opportunities were, where I actually learned from people without having to pay for the experience. Certainly I got way more out of my out of all of this than anything that I did on my own, and anything that I did with courses that I bought. So we did at some point, it was suggested again, probably by Fernie or Ray or one of these guys who I was, my pals, my circle at the time. It was suggested that perhaps Jim should release a course under the Dillard, the magnetic sponsoring brand. And sure enough, we came to an agreement that I would do that, and I released the course, which then was it did quite well in terms of sales for them, they asked Ben Settle then to write the sales letter. He'd been writing sales letters for them, but they asked him to write the sales letter for that course, Pay-Per-Click Domination. So he needed to interview me, and that's how Ben Settle and I became friends. We got on the phone. He was interviewing me. He was getting all, and he knew, like, real knows real kind of thing. He got the impression this is somebody who knows what he's talking about, and we had a similar philosophy on a lot of stuff. So Ben then introduced me to a group of guys that included Dan Gallipoux and Mike Dolpies and Caleb Osborne, who were, his like little group. They were, they had a mastermind going on. And so we would meet every, 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks. We would get together and we'd talk just about what's going on with our business. And we would just, figure out, I'm doing this. Here's what I'm trying out. Here's what's working for me. Hey, what do you think of this? Let's take a look at this sales page. Here's what I would do with that. That sort of thing. And yeah, pretty soon we had, I was actually, a lot of what I did, a lot of the smart things that ended up working out for me came as a result of that mastermind, much more than anything that I had ever purchased in a course. So with that said, I would like to recommend to you guys, given all of this background, I hope that it's been useful to you to hear all of this. Perhaps the really smart way to go is to benefit from this group that we have here, and other groups, I guess, if you have other groups, in reaching out to some of the people there, especially names that you've seen around before or whatever, and get into a conversation with somebody, see if maybe there's a way that you guys can just have a meeting every so often. Just talk, just talk about your businesses. Here's where I'm up to. Here's what's going on with me. Just collaborate on, not collaborate necessarily. You could collaborate, obviously, but just if you were to just talk about where you are in your business, what's going on with you, what you're struggling with, this is a really great opportunity to propel yourself forward, and so that nobody would take advantage of you selling you some bloody freaking $20,000-$50,000 mentorship, because I honestly don't think you'd get that much use out of it. If you could come up with that money, apply it to your business as advertising budget or to hire employees, you'd be way better off. All right. So until the next video, take care.